Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Kaiserreich on the Hearts of Iron 4 engine. And of course, if you don't know, this is a sort of crazy, chaotic, alternate history based on the idea that the German Empire wins World War I, and instead of communism, you have the syndicalism, which only really raised its head much in Spain. And I'm not a big expert on syndicalism, but basically it's sort of, I don't know, more of a fascist communism, in which, and again, I may have this wrong, and you're very free to correct me down below. I do like to learn. But it's more the idea of various communes, but say a factory, that the factory workers communally own it together, but they compete against the factory next door that also makes the same widgets or something like that, so that it is a a communistical system, but instead of a highly centralized, organized system, this is my understanding, it's a bit more of a competitive communism or something. I don't know. But, and if you haven't already, please follow, subscribe to me. Love to see you around more often. And you can also hit that like button. That does two things. One, it tells YouTube that this is a good video, so they'll hopefully show it to more people. And it will tell YouTube, this is the kind of thing you want to see. Show me more of it. Yes, I agree. The communists sound too much like reading the chat up here. Have you ever played as Spain? No, I've not played a game as Spain in any of the versions of anything. Yeah, there may be a through a Spanish Civil War. So we're going to continue this here. So we're exploring. I like this. No problem, Armageddon. I think I'm following what you're saying. I don't like the way Paradox does their alternate histories, because they start with the premise that, oh, Hitler's in power, but if you go this national focus path, I'm just trying to click over, go this national focus path, you can get the communist in power. Well, starting in 1936, and when they originally, back in the early days, and I think most all of the Hearts of Irons, the earliest start time was 36. They really picked that year right, and that was basically it's remilitarization of the Rhineland happens in 36, and you really start to get German armaments industry really starting to being built in 36. From 33 to 36, those roughly 3 years, because I think it's right around January 33, Hitler comes into power. So you have that 3 years. There really is, Hitler is not able to really have like a big industry, armaments build up. He's just securing power. So going back before then, and sort of having this game mechanic where you build tanks and you build units and whatever, really is inappropriate. 36 is the key date. So a lot of stuff is set in that. But if you want to create an alternate reality, I'm all right with that, But you have to either go back and set the time clock back, to 1932, and have Germany in chaos. What path do you want to take? Or you need to set the world up with saying, oh, Hitler is a minor footnote in history, and his National Socialist Party loses, and the communists have come to power in Germany. Now, go. just have that as a starting point, as a mod, a DLC, a whatever you want to call it, and then go down that path. And then it's just going to be a communist path. Or, oh, the Kaiser comes back into Germany or something like this. And just start, have a few years, a story of alternate history that starts it out. Then I'm good with the idea of alternate histories. But I don't like the way they take the stuff and sort of set the world up as it is in 1936 and then let you go down really wacky paths. Check on what's happening in the U.S. Okay, and I'm just reading the chat up here. Yeah, I get your idea, IKB, but as we were talking before, I try to know my enemy to some degree, and that's... people in America are making out as this socialism is this new great thing that we should try. When, of course, socialism and, I don't know, when was Das Kapital and other books of Marx and Engels were writing in 1880 something? 140 years ago or something by now, old communism. But, I believe in freedom. And freedom doesn't just mean the ability to go where you want to go, or even say what you want to say. Freedom also means free to own something, free for your possessions. Life, liberty, and property. I believe in that, and so I don't believe somebody else has the right to my property. Now we could dispute, and I can see that there can be disputes over who owns some property. We've talked earlier about things, and I'm connected to Scottish clans and sort of the Scottish history, and traditionally the Scottish Highlands, there were clan lands, and there was, a nobleman of some sort that was at the top of this system, and and then there were lots of people down, but people had rights to the land, and some people basically sort of had freeholds, but a lot more people just had certain rights to it. And so we might argue that the coming of Norman law to the Highlands and the solidification of the land to some of the current landowners that are this day might not be a legal thing. And we could argue against that, and that it really should be owned by the clan and not by Lord so-and-so, the Duke of Argyll, or whoever. The Duke of Argyll still owns a lot of land in this part of territory, and it really should be owned by Clan Campbell. And then, of course, where is Clan Campbell? Is it all the Campbells all over the world? Those that have moved to Australia, those that have moved to Canada and the US because the Duke of Argyll kicked their ancestors off the land? Now, of course, that there's too many people to live in the place anymore to make any money off of it. So do you sell it and parse out the money? But so you can argue that, in this sort of vein, you could argue that, say, the land that was owned by the czars is not rightfully theirs, that they held it in trust for their nation and people and whatnot, and you could argue that. And so you can argue certain reforms that really doesn't belong to that individual. He was the leader of the group of people who owned it. So like the serfs that belonged to the land really sort of owned part of the land, so you need to divide up that. And so I can see some of those arguments. But when you look at America, you don't have any of that really. Outside of the Indian reservations or some similar sort of setup in America. You have corporate land, and of course corporates are often owned by a lot of people and whatnot. But so we have the right to property. So that's what I believe, that socialism doesn't allow you the freedom of ownership. And yeah, I know, and I get some socialists just believe in nationalizing large holdings. But this is one thing that most people don't get. And recently, I think it was the Danish premier or something came to America and tried to tell people in America, "Hey Django, good to see you." Tried to tell the Americans, Denmark isn't a socialist country. It is a capitalist country with a lot of social welfare programs. And it is a very interesting distinction there. And I do understand that social welfare and socialist are two different things, and I will grant you that. And so, say we have some social welfare programs in the United States. Now, the main one that was formed a long time ago was meant to be a cushion, not a full support, but a sort of minimum additional sort of support, but that you had to sort of pay into it, which was called Social Security, in which you paid a percentage of your income into Social Security. You got a Social Security payment back once you got to be old enough, no matter your economic status. Now, I believe you should have a means test that if you're really wealthy, you shouldn't get any of the money back. But if you're just don't have to be poor, but just sort of moderately okay, you get Social Security money payments, but you specifically paid into the system. Now we can talk about the systems going bankrupt and all kinds of problems there. But that, or we also have in America Medicaid. Basically, if you're poor, the government gives you a free medical care in America. I know a lot of people outside of America don't realize this, but if you are poor in America, you get free medical care. Now, it doesn't get any medical care you want for free, no, but it gets a sort of base level of medical care for free. Definitely anything like an emergency. You get in a car accident, you live in Chicago, they'll patch up all your bullet holes for you because you get shot a lot in Chicago. So if you're poor, they'll do all that for you. So if you're a poor person in Chicago, every time you get shot, they'll take you to the hospital. They'll do all this stuff for you. If you need to be there 6-8 weeks because it was a shot in the lungs or something, and you got to really spend a lot of time in the hospital in Chicago. It's a Democratic city, so you get shot a lot in Chicago. Chicago has I think a higher gun not necessarily death rate, because there's a lot more people shot than are shot and killed. But they'll easily have 20 people killed in a weekend. Chicago is a more dangerous place than Afghanistan or Kabul for being shot. You're more likely to be shot in the city of Chicago. Oh, not every neighborhood in Chicago, but the poor neighborhoods. So you're shot in Chicago, they'll rush you off to the hospital, they'll take care of you, and you'll get back, and you'll be back on. But you don't necessarily get any and every medical treatment you could want with Medicaid. And I'm not reading the chat. I'll be back to you guys in just a second. So we have, this is, people dying in the streets in America. I heard, leading up to Obamacare, some Brit Awards or something like that. I was just disgusted at that, because no one is dying in the streets in America, unless they're, obviously hit by a car or something. If you're indigent, if you're poor, and you need medical treatment, the government takes care of you. If you go to a hospital, any hospital in America that's open to any way into the public, whether it's a private hospital, a government hospital, any hospital that's open to the public in any sort of way, they'll take care of you for free. You show up, they take care of you. Now, if you have any money, they want to be paid. if they're a for-profit hospital. There are some free hospitals, free clinics in America that are purely donations, some very high-level cancer research hospitals, very super high level, that are free because they are, not government supported, but they're supported by donations mostly from rich people. And so now they only have a limited number of beds, big amount of beds, but they're free cancer research hospitals. There is a few, that. So, but if this is a for-profit hospital, they want to be paid. Now, they're set up to take insurance money, but if you don't have insurance money, they still want to be paid if you have money. So like if you own a home, you go to the hospital for a major thing, but you don't have any money, they'll want your home. Okay, so it's sort of the lower middle class in America that sort of gets really hit hard, because if you have any sort of assets, any sort of money, any sort of property, or if you make they'll attach a certain amount of your income, they'll want your money. Okay, but if you're really poor, they'll still take care of you and say, have a good day, no problem. And the way they cover that is by charging everybody else that comes to that hospital 10 or 20% more, padding the bill, if you will. I mean, it's sort of built into the system, in that they know roughly how many free patients they're going to have and whatever. And so it's just the overall overhead of the running the hospital, not just that they're secretly up your bills, but they'll charge the insurance company normally, instead of $100 a night for a bed, think more like $300 a night or something, but they'll charge the insurance company, instead of $100 a night, I like to keep math simple, they'll charge them $120 to pay for the few frees that non-insurance people and non-cash paying people. So America has social welfare programs, and I'm not against the idea of social welfare programs. I'm against the idea of social welfare programs this big, because they're way too big. Way too big. Now, if you want to have one for a state, say Florida, okay, fine. Figure it out, have Florida's program. You can have Georgia's, you can have South Carolina, and each state can have their own. And if you even want to give money from the federal government, fine, but have a program based on a manageable scale. Now, as a few of you have been sort of saying, no, I've not read the Turner Diaries. Hello, Murtek98. So, yeah, let me go back and look at some of the chats. So, yeah, so if you're, and it used to be in the olden days, Democrats in America want to do the thing in the Nordic countries. Yeah, I know, but the Nordic countries are more free in many economic areas than America already is. They claim they want to do the Nordic thing, but they really want to go further than the Nordic model. And so a socialist, and like I think the Cortez woman you mentioned here. So if you're a socialist like Bernie Sanders, they believe in collective ownership of things, of property and other things. So they believe the right to nationalize, to take over. And that Cortez woman was photographed very recently, I believe within the last week, wearing 3 pieces of clothing, a pair of shoes, a slack, and a sort of jacket that was pointed out to, and some astute woman who knows these things, that those 3 things cost over $3,500. The shoes, the jacket, and the pants, because they're all designer stuff. So she's wearing $3,500, over $3,000 worth of clothing on her back, and she's a socialist running for Congress. She's probably going to get her seat. It's sort of the normally very safe seat. I think she's going to get it, but with some of her antics, I wouldn't, and I don't know who the Republican is running against her, I wouldn't be as surprised as something. Yes, JP. You're right about like St. Jude's. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about in America. And I know many Americans know these kinds of things about it. But there are a lot of ignorant Americans and a lot of the rest of the world who have, like in Britain, a national healthcare system, think, because of the sort of the propaganda that comes out of America, think that America doesn't have free medical care to those who need it. We just have a paid system for those who can afford it. And it's a minimum free for that. And so, yes, if you're a member of a democratic socialist, now there may, so if you're a socialist party, like the Labour Party is, or at least was before Margaret Thatcher, and I think is very much so under Jeremy Corbyn, they want to not only control but nationalize large-scale industries. And that's what most socialists will stop at large-scale industry nationalization. Where communists want to nationalize it down to the individual shop, the individual whatever. So they just want to go further. But that is different than, like I was starting to say, old-style Democrats who just want a big social welfare net to help people in need. The old Democrats didn't want to nationalize any businesses, anything like that, but the socialists are taking over in America for that kind of thing. You're right about the collectively owned property. Now, I would say that that's not entirely true, IKB, if the collectively owned property, that you can see the group of people that collectively own it. And maybe a good example of that would be, say, a small town whose city-owned property, like the city parks, for a small town. Or a small group of people owning something. If you can get all of the people who own it into, say, a large room, not a super huge stadium, but, into a thing that you can sort of see, or if you have a country that you can get onto a high place and see all of the country in vision, so like Monaco or, I don't know, Luxembourg. I've never been to Luxembourg. Driven sort of, been through Belgium, Germany, France. Haven't actually been to Luxembourg. But, I don't know if you can get up to some high place in Luxembourg and see the whole country. So if you can sort of get up in the high place and see the whole country in Luxembourg, then that can be all right. Have collectively owned stuff. Because you can identify who collectively owns it and you have a connection to it yourself. But if you're talking New York City, people are going to treat it like trash. People are just going to leave their trash in the public parks and not care. Where if it was their own small hometown park, they're going to care because their children play there every day. As opposed to in New York, you got to pay workers to come and clean up the park because everybody just leaves their trash because its collective ownership is a too big of a scale of things. So I am not against a collective ownership of something. I guess this goes back to my Celtic heritage and the idea of clan-owned property or enterprises or whatever. Now, that doesn't mean I don't also want to have personal ownership of things too. But I can also be part of a collective as well. But I don't want to be a pure collective in which I am what's the term for it? Sort of a syndicalist, but the other communist, like a commune. A communist, not a communist, but a communist, in which everybody puts all of their possessions into the commune. And I don't want to live that way, but I could own a share of a company that may or may not be able to be traded on with anybody else. Maybe I just own, a 5% share of some company. Yeah, that's fine, or something like that. You're right about Corbyn, I would say. Treason maybe slightly, and I've started kind of following the situation with Corbyn. I'm not saying he wouldn't be or shouldn't be, but definitely he's associated with a lot of wrong people. Okay. New England and Canada. After the British Revolution collapsed the American economy, upstate New York and the states towards Canada preserved their economies. Too conservative for syndicalism, but too moderate for America. First, New England has become isolated from the rest of the United States and is now effectively Ottawa's sphere. But they haven't even gone to civil war yet. Sphere of influence. Okay, let's hope. Okay. These, of course, are just my thoughts. It doesn't make them right or the only thoughts. And I, too, as I go through life, think about and rethink things. And so there are other valid ideas out there. Just, only 100 million dead so far in communism. Let's give it another try. Now, this is the problem with something like communism. What do you do about the people who object? People like me. You're going to have to kill people like me. And so to put that into practice, you have to use violence. This is where something different, if you're going to be a communalist, go knock yourself out. Collectively go buy a farm in Vermont or a building, a residential building in New York or whatever, and go live communally, and everybody can go off to their day jobs and then pool their money, at the end of the week, end of the month or whatever, and to pay all the bills and have a group of people doing all the shopping for the people living communally in the building. And yeah, knock yourself out as a voluntary exercise, fine. I'm happy for you to go do it. But once you start to enforce it upon others, that is where I draw the objection to it. Okay. Well, Tippett, I don't know about that, and I correspond, including with a few labor people. At least one of them I know. I correspond online, kind of thing. So I know these people online only. But they hate Corbyn. Now, they don't like the Tories either, but they hate Corbyn. So Theresa May, the good thing about Theresa May is she's not Jeremy Corbyn. And maybe the good thing about Boris, what's his name, the former London mayor and guy who left the cabinet, Boris Johnson. Again, maybe the best thing about him is he has wacky hair and he's not Jeremy Corbyn. So long as Jeremy Corbyn is in charge of the Labour Party, the Tories have a chance. That's my feeling. And of course, we have a few other Brits here who may have a better understanding on the ground than I do, but that's sort of my understanding. Again, I'm not saying for sure the Tories are going to win, but I think he is keeping the Tory chances alive. Okay, Siam's new constitution, great. We don't really care. Electoral gridlock in Britain, 1936 trade union. Okay, this is these guys' Britain. Okay, not our guys' Britain. Okay, interesting. And what's her name? The black woman who's like shadow foreign secretary or whatever it is. What's her face? Another nut job. They do most of the work to keep the Tories in power, because Theresa May sucks. I really wish, and I forget who, um, Theresa May's the prime minister just before. I really wished he could have embraced Brexit and stayed in power and did a 180, but he didn't seem like he wanted to, so he left, and I understood why he left. But had he just really, really pushed on and embraced Brexit, I think that would have been the best solution for that. Yeah, Diane Abbott, that's right. You got that right. That's who I was thinking of. Patriotic Brit. Yeah, I agree. She should resign at least, but that's, again, from... Yeah, I'm not terribly, if I think I know here, which Sargon of whatever. Yeah, I've not watched much of his stuff, and I'm not, if you're talking about the YouTuber, I think, not necessarily in agreement with some of that. Daniel Hannan, he's my favorite British politician. He's a, okay, this is down here. Yeah, okay. Nudge, whatever one wins. He's a, currently a, European member of Parliament. British guy, Tory. But very, very much a, an American Tory, shall we say. He's very much free market, very much in love with America. I haven't watched much Count Dankula, but I was also shocked and supported his free speech elements most assuredly. Though again, I'm not. And like I say, I've watched very little of his stuff. Mostly him commenting around his hate speech trial and whatnot and fines, and so see, I think hate speech is not necessarily a good thing, but a thing that should be able to be done. You should be able to do hate speech and stay on platforms and not be deplatformed, and definitely not you know, any sort of legal thing against you, government. Yeah, that is shocking to me, that you're fining him over that. Yeah, Tommy Robinson, that's another. Again, Tommy Robinson, I don't know a whole lot about, so Unione Syndicalist, Christina wins election, 5th Congress, Republic, okay, Italy. Again, those of you who are watching now or later on, I've known who Tommy Robinson, generally vaguely speaking, for many years, who he was, and he's always sort of been associated with either, well, I would maybe call neo-fascist parties. Not, and I don't follow the far right in Britain that much, but he seems, and I don't know, seems to never really go to the hard right of them and have left them, and I think he's reformed some of his opinions. Again, but what they did to him was shocking and bad. And you're right, JP. And see, that's a big point that I have, and I don't know if you were here when I was talking about very early on, before we started some of this, that people, you don't, if you were, no one's going to do a YouTube channel that's a pro-Hitler Nazi channel. Of course, that'd be banned by YouTube. And what if you had a professor, whether it's a professor of history or a professor of science of something in a university, who's a Nazi, who's an open Nazi? They would be kicked out immediately. And you know what? I would agree with, especially a professor who's an open Nazi should be kicked out of any sort of university immediately. But I also think if you're an open communist in any university, you should be kicked out immediately. You have the right to be a communist. You have free speech to be a communist, free speech to be a Nazi or a fascist. But you should not be a communist and be a professor who's teaching kids. I don't think there should. Now, of course, there's going to be, because you have free speech, there's going to have some communist university in America somewhere. Fine. And they're all going to be commies. They can all wear their hammer and sickle badges and whatever, and students who want to go to them can go to them. But any school in America that gets any government funds, especially any federal government funds, who has a federally insured student loan, they should have 0 communist professors and 0 Nazi professors. You have the right to be a Nazi. You have the free speech to be a Nazi. You have the right to be a communist. You have the free speech to be a communist. And I would let them all, I'd let either one of them have YouTube channels. You know, they can have YouTube channels. Both sides. They can have their YouTube channels. They can have their swastikas or their hammers and sickles. They can do it. You can have a Pol Pot fanboy channel on YouTube for all I care. That's freedom of speech. But to have people that support the ideas of Pol Pot in universities, and then you go, oh, well, no one actually really supports Pol Pot. And again, to you Americans out there who've been educated in the American system, that's the communist leader of Cambodia who kills one-third of the population of Cambodia. Now, he's a small-level communist killer because it's only, 2 or 3 million people he kills compared to, 50 million or something that Mao kills. But so he's small level. But then I've known professors and students back in my day that supported Sendero Luminoso, the Shining Path in Peru, which was a Pol Potist and is to this day, because Sendero Luminoso, and I know I'm butchering the Spanish, Sendero Luminoso is still an active communist movement in Peru. I think they're very super marginalized now. But they are a Pol Potist focused communist party, okay? So they're just, because they haven't butchered 1/3 of Peru, they get to sort of be away with it. So, yeah, Pol Pot. Pol Pot was such a bad communist leader, killed so many people, doing such bad, terrible things, that communist Vietnam invades Cambodia to kick the Khmer Rouge out of power in Cambodia. That's how bad it gets in Cambodia. That this happened, I think it was in 79. And this was when Vietnam was still very, very much a communist country. Vietnam sends in its army, to invade Cambodia to kick Pol Pot out. So yeah, more cities. Yeah, this is the Kaiserreich map. I don't know if they've added more cities. Oh, good to know, Armageddon. Yes, you're right, IKB. And that is part of why I do this channel, is to be sunlight on it. And so, basically, one of the criteria, not the only criteria, but one of the criteria to be killed in Pol Pot's regime was you needing eyeglasses. Why, you may think that in Cambodia you'll be killed if you need eyeglasses? Because you're some sort of racial eugenicist like the Nazis and want to kill out the inferior people? No, because the only people that really need eyeglasses are the people who know how to read. He wanted to kill off all educated people because he wanted to start over again. Yes, intellectuals. Anybody with any sort of reading ability was to be killed in his system. Now, I'm sure there were a few elitist pro-Potists that were running some camps that weren't killed off. And presumably, Pol Pot knew how to read. So, yeah, they wanted to kill everybody. If they knew you needed eyeglasses, they wanted to kill you. And so, yeah, Pol Pot is a very, very bad dude. And Sunderno Luminoso, the Shining Path guerrillas in Peru. Again, I think they're super marginalized today. I haven't been following them. But, I knew at least one girl who was down in Peru who never quite admitted her contacts, but, okay, yeah, I didn't know specifically he was educated in a French university, but I'm sure he knew how to read and write, Pol Pot. But an American girl who had spent some time down in Peru, and I know she was involved with some radical movements down there. And I don't know if she ever hooked up with and she was mainly, I think, in Lima. But I know she hooked up with some radical elements, and I don't know if they were Pol Pot. I mean, Sunderno Luminoso. But she spoke very fondly of Sunderno Luminoso. Yeah, you're right about starting over in year one, because he was doing the tabela rosa, a blank tablet kind of thing. Sir Ball. Yeah, I think they have stars in their beret. But yeah, and so the Sunderno was, like I say, a Pol Potist and a radicalist for communist revolutionary movements. They were very, very radical. I mean, much more radical than the Sandinistas. Daniel Ortega's still in power in Nicaragua, and they're having a sort of a counter revolution or something in Nicaragua right now to this very day. But yeah, no. As you can sort of tell, I know I've been chatting with some people online here and stuff. You should know all the bad things that America's done in Latin America and things. Yeah, I sort of do know some of the bad things that they've done. And yeah, the U.S. sort of helps overthrow Allende and puts in Pinochet in power. Good move. Worked out well. Kept Chile from going super left during the Cold War. Works out great. So yeah, good move getting rid of Allende. Not that Pinochet is the greatest person in the world, and he does bad things. But he also doesn't let it go to wacky communists. So yeah, I do know about Latin America. And when I say I've never traveled to Latin America personally, so I don't know it that way. But I've known through connections people on both sides of the fight that have been down in there and done things and been part of stuff. So I do sort of know. So yeah, well, let's get back to playing the game. Some of the people on YouTube will probably appreciate that. But yeah, America currently, you wanted to check, is currently stable. Again, most of Europe is currently stable. Or is stable in the sense that there hasn't been a major outbreak, civil war, or revolution. Still just sort of Click in Mongolia. And Saudi Arabia has been formed. Okay. The Sauds are in power. Due to good helicopter tours. Don't know specifically what you're referring to. Unfortunately, I don't know that. Yeah, I'm not excusing anything bad that Pinochet did, and I'm not saying he didn't do anything bad. But to me, the alternative being a radicalist communist overthrow, I see as worse. Yeah, JP, but you're out of step with America. Oh, okay, dropping communists from helicopters. Yeah, that was done at different times. You know, not my preferred method of execution. And I don't believe you should necessarily just be killed because you're a communist. But if they know you've done bad things and you need to be executed, because hey, communists, would do bad things, then yeah, I think he was too heavy-handed. But I wasn't there and running the country, so, and again, I'm not saying he didn't do bad things. I know he did. It's sort of look at the alternative is, I think it was worse. Okay. Bill C7. Okay. Parliament votes for the final draft. Bill C7 now being examined by the House. Yeah, I don't know why we're getting here. I guess there may be some sort of alternative. Okay. Nova Scotia add 1 infrastructure. Add 2 building slots. New Brunswick add a military effect. Hey, thanks for following the channel. I do appreciate it. Yep. We're going to go with this. Great. That's basically, I could tell looking at it that we did sort of influence how it is. So, yeah. Okay. We have this. Oh, I guess we could have gone down royal prerogatives. We're doing this, yeah. Again, my view of monarchy isn't that absolute monarchy, and probably the most absolutist monarchy that I know of is Louis XIV's monarchy. Now, I say that knowing about Tsarism, the way the Tsars ruled and other things, but the Tsars did not have nearly as much direct control as Louis XIV did. The Sun King, because of the whole Versailles, I don't know if you've watched the miniseries Versailles, he really centralized power and really got power to himself. For the Tsars, there was a lot of diffused regional sort of powers under their Grand Dukes and whatnot. So that the Tsar, may be able to make proclamations or general things in Moscow, but there's still a lot of diffused power. So I look at the sort of most, et toi et moi, I am the state, I am France, kind of stuff is Louis XIV. To be a monarchist, to think monarchy is a good idea, doesn't mean that that's your goal. It just means that you want the stability of the monarchy, and maybe very much you want to go with having, like the current monarchy in Britain. The monarchy is the monarchy. It does its thing, has its influence where it thinks it needs to influence things. But otherwise, let's, Parliament and the people sort of govern themselves. If the people are governing themselves well, great. Now, of course, if the people don't govern themselves well, they break out into a civil war, other sorts of things go sort of wrong, they don't make good decisions, then you can have the monarchy step in. It's a different sort of thing. Yeah, yes, that's right. But I think Saudi Arabia is, I don't think it's that centralized. So there's a difference between, and I'm not saying that they are not absolutely in power at the top, but do they really have control? I mean, they're much more of a coalition that I see in Saudi Arabia. And this is sort of why they've sort of made this coalition power situation with the Wahhabist Islamists and other groups. And so it's sort of a coalition situation. That's how I see Saudi Arabia. No, they don't have a lot of democratic institutions. I agree with that. But it's sort of, again, like the Tsar. People will see the Tsar as absolutist. Yeah, the Tsar feels that they are absolutely in power, But if you look at most all czars, they're constantly worrying about, you know, outbreaks of rebellion of different types, including leader rebellions that will, you know, someone will send out an official order to do something. They'll say, yes, sir, as soon as we can, sir, and then do nothing about it. You know, because how are you going to make them do it? Kind of thing. They will appear to agree, but they will not necessarily agree. Okay, I think we want to come over here. Sea and rail expansion, which gets down to here. Civilian factories. Found the CBC, which gets... Ooh, another research slot. I like another research slot. Trans-Canadian Airlines. Invest in natural resources. Ooh, that would be helpful. We could use some of that. I like a lot of these. I think we want to do this because I think we want to get down to... I like that research slot thing. Yeah, we got to do this. Get the Canadian Broadcasting System going. Or Corporation, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC. Okay, Poland elects the new king. Regency's finally over. Do you still elect kings? I thought we had determined it was going to be Sobieski. The Polish monarchy traditionally was an elected monarchy. I'm researching new tanks, Arno. Currently just new tanks. I really want to do some of the other, you know, industries and excavations and that kind of stuff first. Now, of course, I'm used to World War II, in which you got till 39 or 40 before the real war kicks off, but I don't know if we're going to have to intervene in the American Civil War here or something that sooner than that we might need it, but we are trying to upgrade tanks, which will help. We still have a force here that can intervene in India or somewhere else in the world. I currently, because of playing my German Kaiserreich campaign, currently don't plan on going to war with Germany. That's current plans. But if Germany starts falling apart, which I don't know if they will, I wouldn't be adverse to try to retake some of our former colonial possessions. You know, these kind of places, or Malta or some other place, but they've sort of got to be collapsing enough that it looks like it's good to pick up. Okay, blood on the streets of Shanghai. The authority of the Legation Mandate Council has collapsed in a single night of blood and violence. Street gangs organized by the Chinese criminal organizations have slaughtered many members of the police corps, administrators, and even a handful more of the influential delegates from the legation powers. Fortunately, since the dividends we are entitled to have not been paid anyway, this has little effect on us. Remove national security. Okay. Two, you guys are bloodthirsty. It knocks us down to political power negative. I don't know that we can afford that. Yeah. Guys are all pushing for 2. But we don't have the political power to do that right now. State owner. No, it's not there. One. War. Think long term. Yeah, I think long term is what we need to do. Because we got I know we want war people. I get that. Well, I don't see if it was just these few places, I might. I say that I might because I have a navy. We don't even have Hong Kong. Yeah. I don't know how we're getting there either because I don't know if we're close enough to invade. Maybe we could come out of here. So you guys think we should okay, Dominion of Canada has access to the well, somehow we're having guaranteed they're well, unlike Hearts of Iron 3, Hearts of Iron 4, when I save this event will still be here. So we're going to think about this. And I think this is where we're going to end the Kaiserreich for today. So I would like to play some War Thunder. I don't know if Tippett wants to play now. And we'll think about this, and we'll get some input from YouTube viewers as well as... we already have some Marines. We have 2 units at least of Marines. Yeah, here they are. We have a few Marines. Not overly powerful, but maybe we can take one of those positions at a time. So right now I'm leading to going to war right now, even though I'm thinking long term for Britain, but this may be good. Okay, well first let me play with Tippett since we played with Patriotic Brit earlier. So your screen is going to go black. That's not the end of the chat, so we're going to exit this. Your screen will, like I say, sure you want to exit. Yes, okay. So don't worry about the black screen. We're still here. Oh, and we need to stop the you watching on YouTube. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for liking the videos, of course. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And yes, you guys got a black screen as well. Please post your comments, what you think we should do about the Triad Syndicalist. We'll be back for more Kaiserreich soon.